Hi everyone. In this video I'm going to show you one of the U-Try problems from your book to help you along this week. It's page 302, problem 24. We're given two functions and we're going to find four things in this problem. We're going to do all four operations, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing with these two functions. So for me doing f of x plus g of x, I'm going to do exactly what it says. I'm going to add the two functions together to get 1 over x plus negative 4x over 5. Okay, so that's what f of x plus g of x looks like. But now our goal really is to try to combine this to one fraction. We don't want to leave it as two separate fractions. So just like with numerical fractions without variables, algebraic fractions here we need a lowest common denominator in order to add or subtract. So the advantage to multiplying and dividing is I don't have to do this step. Okay, so for addition and subtraction, I need a lowest common denominator. So in this case, what I first look for to find my lowest common denominator is I look at my two denominators. And if they have to be factored, I do that because factoring will help me find the lowest common denominator. But these two are both just a monomial, so there's nothing that I can do. They both just have one term. There's no factoring to do. So really, if I have an x in one denominator and a 5 in the other, the only thing I could pick for my lowest common denominator is a 5x. It's really taking each one of those factors and putting it together. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, let's move up a little bit, is I'm going to rewrite, just like if we were doing this with a numerical, I'm going to rewrite with my new denominator. So I'm going to stick my new denominator into both, my new lowest common denominator, into both of those new fractions. And I'm going to look at my old denominator and my new one and see, well, what did I multiply by to get from my old to my new? From my old to my new. So from x to 5x, I multiplied by 5. So I have to do the same to the top in order to maintain equality, so that I haven't changed my fraction, I'm just rewriting it. So that makes this new numerator a 5. And from 5 to get to 5x, I multiplied by x, so I had to do that to the top and the bottom. So my new numerator there is negative 4x squared. Okay, so if I were to reduce these fractions, these new fractions, I would be back to my original ones, which is supposed to happen. I'm not supposed to be changing the value of them. I'm just rewriting them with a different denominator. And now that I have them as the same denominator, now I can go ahead and add or subtract their numerators, depending on what sign it is. So in this case, I'm going to rewrite it as 5. Instead of saying plus negative 4x squared, it would be better to just write minus 4x squared over my common denominator. Okay, so that is in lowest terms, and I got those two fractions together as one. So let's see what happens when we subtract. So subtracting, we already did a lot of the work for this one. So if I'm subtracting them, I'm going to end up with 1 over x minus, right, negative 4x over 5. Okay, eventually I'm going to make those two minuses a plus, but I do have to be careful in general, depending on how many terms that second fraction has. If it has two terms in the top, I would have to be very careful to distribute the negative. All right, so we know from the other one that our lowest common denominator was 5x. We don't really have to redo all that work. We know this was both 5x, and we know that this was a 5, and then we know this was a minus 4x squared. So that will be the same. It's really just a matter of now I have a subtraction in between. So now when I go across and add add or subtract, this one's a subtraction. So when I do 5 minus negative 4x squared, that's going to really become 5 plus 4x squared. If you get the same exact thing when you add the two functions as subtracting, something went wrong because it would be impossible to get the same thing. So that's the best simplified version that I can get for that one. Okay, and then my last slide here is going to be multiplying and dividing. So let me just really quickly write this one. I'm going to do 1x times, I keep forgetting the original functions and I have to keep looking at my book. That one. And let me just write this real quick. This is going to be 1 over x divided by, notice when I do that, I like to distinguish, like to use a bigger fraction bar between the two, so you can see that I'm doing a fraction divided by a fraction. If you have all those fraction bars exactly the same length and same size, it's hard to tell, you know, which one is like, what's separating the two. So that's how I do that with one bigger fraction bar. So no LCD, right? That's the good news here. I don't need an LCD for multiplication and division. So for multiplication, for this first one over here, I don't, I have two options. I can either look to cross reduce if I see anything that can cross reduce. Sorry, I'm playing around with the pens. Or I can multiply across and reduce at the end. It's kind of up to you. So what I do see here that can cross reduce on this one is I see an x can cross reduce with an x. So I can only do this when I'm canceling out common factors. And when you look at negative 4x, the negative 4 is a factor and the x is a factor. It's very different if you have like x plus or minus something. Then I can't cross out part of that term. And that will come up in my next video, which is going to be problem 28. So I'll give you some tips for that one too. So x over x divides cancels out to 1. So what I have left on the top is a negative 4. I'm multiplying across now. And what I have left on the bottom is just a 5. Okay, so all that divides out to negative 4/5. Now when I do division, I have to remember that when I divide by fractions, you rewrite as multiplication by the reciprocal. That's our first step. So I'm going to rewrite this as 1 over x times 5 over negative 4x. Same thing here. If you ended up getting the same thing when you multiply these two functions as you divided, then something must have gone wrong, just like with addition subtraction. So we can see this is two different problems, right? Now when I multiply here, nothing cross reduces because those terms are in the denominator together. So the best I can do is just multiply across and get 5 over negative 4x squared. And that is, so I can double check to make sure nothing cancels out here. You know, if I missed it when they were two separate fractions, I can look when I have it multiplied to one fraction. But there's no common factors between anything in the numerator and denominator. So those are in simplest form. Okay, so check back for problem number 28 for another video that goes along with that.